Hi, my name is Catherine Williams, and this is my cultural chest. So, to begin, all of my social identities are on the outside here. First, I chose a door as a symbol for my race. I am white, and I feel like because of white privilege, many doors have been opened to me because of my race. So, that's why I chose the door. I chose a cell phone as a symbol of my age. I am a part of Gen Z, so I feel like Gen Z and technology are often closely associated with one another. I chose a feather because I am naturally thin, so the feather represents my size. I chose the Venus symbol here to represent my um, gender and my sex. I am a cisgender woman. And I chose the American flag to represent kind of my ethnicity. Um, when thinking about ethnicity, I didn't want to assume a symbolic ethnicity because I don't feel like I am necessarily tied to any of the ethnicities of my ancestors, for example, Irish or Russian. So I just stuck with the American flag because I feel like when I think of my ethnicity, I think of being American. So, all of these things interact with one another. My race, my age, and my thinness, and my Americanness all give me privileges. Although I am a woman, I am treated differently than, say, a black woman or a transgender woman, solely based off of my other identities being white, being young, being thin, being American. Um, so all of these things interact with one another to create a unique set of privileges in my life. This has impacted my worldview for a very long time. I thought racism was only distinct acts of meanness. I didn't think it was very common in today's society, even living in the South. And I just assumed that America was a meritocracy. I didn't understand why certain groups felt that they were being discriminated against based on race, ethnicity, what language they're speaking, things like that. But ever since I started college in 2016, a lot of those personal biases have changed. I've done a lot of work to undo them, and I no longer believe that America is a meritocracy. I believe that all of these social identities are closely related to how you are treated in life. And for me, my whiteness, my youngness, my thinness, and being American opens up many doors for me. Um, these things affected my worldview, however, very much so, um, before I began to be educated about race, class, and gender. And they still affect my worldview. I can't understand um, in totality where someone of another race, for example, or another age or another size, I can't fully understand their experience because I haven't lived that experience. However, I can understand that there are fundamental differences, especially in the way that people are treated between people of different race, genders, and classes. So on the inside of my box, I put a magnolia to represent a part of my social identity. I am Southern. I was born in Louisiana and raised here. I still live here today. Um, I feel like growing up in the South, there were a lot of racial tensions and forms of racial segregation, although not enforced by law. The school I went to was an all-white school. I mostly hung around white people growing up, and the same was true for black people my age. A lot of them went to high schools that were majority black people and hung around other black people. And so growing up in the South has really affected my worldview in that I did sense there was a sort of separation between races growing up, and I didn't really understand why, um, but I just knew that there was some sort of difference, and I didn't understand what that could be, or I never really delved into that further until I started taking classes on race and class and gender in my undergraduate, and I'm taking one now, obviously. So that is how being in the South has kind of impacted my worldview. I chose a record player to symbolize my mental illness. I do have obsessive compulsive disorder, and sometimes my brain feels like it is on it, like it's a broken record player. So I chose that to symbolize that. I think having a mental illness has affected my worldview, in that I'm a lot more empathetic towards people who are struggling with mental illness. Getting help in this country and being taken seriously for mental illness is very difficult. Um, and I feel like because I'm white, because I'm young, because I'm thin, a lot of my health concerns are taken more seriously than other people. And even then, it is still difficult. So I can't imagine how difficult it would be for other populations as a young white person, saying that it is difficult being a mentally ill person in this country. I feel like I have a special empathy for homeless people, for people living in poverty, for people maybe that have committed crimes even based off of their mental illness, or having that be a factor in their situations. And those are ultimately the populations that I want to work with, because being a mentally ill person can completely affect every area of your life. I chose the heart with the pride flag in it, not because I'm part of the LGBTQ community. I am heterosexual myself, which also plays into all of my privileges. I have a very different experience as a woman, as a cisgender straight woman compared to a transgender woman. However, I chose to include the pride flag because I did grow up with two moms. I feel like, oh, my dog's on the bed, sorry. I feel like that has given me a unique worldview, and that I've always been very accepting of people of different sexual orientations and gender identities. It's never really something I questioned or felt was wrong. I grew up being around a very loving family, and just accepting that everyone is cut from different cloth. That doesn't mean that someone is better or worse than someone else. So that is why I chose this. I think it's affected my worldview a lot. It's made me very empathetic towards people of all different backgrounds. I chose the stairs because I grew up in an upper middle class family. I feel like that class mobility and opportunity that comes with growing up in an upper middle class family is something that plays into my race and my ethnicity a lot. I think that I wouldn't be given the opportunities that I was given, especially to participate in higher education, as easily. I wouldn't have reached those goals as easily if I was not a white person in America. And so I chose the stairs because I feel like my socioeconomic class has kind of elevated me in a way that not everyone has the privilege of experiencing. Lastly, I chose this question mark with some sparkles around it to represent my religion. I'm an agnostic person, which means that I don't necessarily believe in any particular religion or God, but I more so accept that I do not know the answers of the universe. I feel like this has affected my worldview, and that it's made me a lot more open-minded. I'm much more accepting of other people's worldviews and ideas about religion or ways of life than I was when I went to Catholic school. Not to say that a Catholic person couldn't be just as open. I just found that openness through my agnosticism. So all of these parts of my personal identity have affected my worldview just as all the parts of my social identity have. All of these play together. I have so much privilege as a white, heterosexual, young, thin person, um, especially in this country, that um, really prioritizes the wants and needs of white young people, white, young, thin, heterosexual people over the needs of people of color, people of different sexual orientations, people of different class backgrounds, people of different ethnicities. So I've been very fortunate in that way, and I hope to use that privilege to create a better future for this country.